What if your reality, what if your life, what if everything you saw, what if everything you were involved in within your life was a direct reflection of what is going on inside of you? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the time we are waiting for something to change in our external reality. We are waiting for something to change in our life in order to feel what we want to feel, in order to feel the happiness, in order to feel the love, in order to feel the joy, for example. When in fact it works the opposite way. If you want to change your reality, you want to change what you experience, the relationships you attract, you want to change it. You want to only attract the things that you deserve. You want to cut the cycle that you keep running into, that you don't mean to run into, but you keep running into. Take it back in on yourself. We are out in the beautiful sunshine today, and I actually saw the downside of it initially, but then I changed my perspective and I saw a huge positive side, which is that you have a much interesting background to look at compared to my normal background. There's these tree choppers that are just making a huge racket at it's not really an apartment, it's like a townhouse kind of thing at the moment, and I didn't know anything about it, and it was going on for hours. I was waiting and waiting to film, and then I was like, nah, you know what, let's just do it outside. So I found this quiet, it's a little bit windy, but quiet spot right near the beach. This is actually one of my favorite places in Australia. It's called Kingscliff. It has a lot of good memories for me. It's one of my father's favorite places as well, so I love coming here. I always feel at peace and at home when I'm here. It's a lot more relaxed than the Gold Coast. Instead of relying on the external to feel a different internal emotion, we actually have to change our internal emotions to then experience it externally, okay? When we look at this, we should ask ourselves, well then, if you keep experiencing, for example, similar people or similar scenarios, so they're just in a different environment or they've just happened at different stages of life. Nonetheless, they're similar people with similar qualities, with similar personalities, whether that's a job, whether that's a boss, whether that's a relationship, whatever it might be. Maybe it's the same struggles in business that you keep facing time and time and time again. And we notice. If you're aware enough and you reflect enough, you will notice the same and similar things keep happening. But why? The reason why is because it is familiar to you. Okay, and remember, our most familiar things are hidden inside of our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is a part of our mind and the part of our brain that we are not consciously aware of. Now, where does our subconscious mind fully develop? Where is it like a sponge? Where is it most absorbent to? In our theta state, a very deep brainwave state that we experience from the ages of 0 to 5, sometimes 0 to 5 and 6 and 7. So sometimes these familiar environments, familiar emotions, familiar personality types, those things are so familiar to us, but because they're so familiar to us because of experiencing them at a young age, we are not consciously aware of our familiarities, okay? But it starts with the awareness. When you become aware of what is familiar to you, because what is familiar to us, even if it's negative, it is comfortable because it is familiar. We've felt this emotion before. We've experienced this kind of event before. And so we continue to attract similar people, personality types, emotions, scenarios, no matter how old we get, because we like, as human beings, we like what is familiar. We don't like what is unfamiliar. What is unfamiliar is uncertain. What is unfamiliar is unpredictable. But then comes the question, okay, if what is familiar to you, for example, maybe you had a narcissistic parent and so you keep attracting narcissistic people into your life because you're not a narcissist and you're an empath, and an empath, for example, naturally are attracted towards narcissistic people or people with narcissistic tendencies. If you're like that, for example, it's like, okay, great that you've realized that. Great that you've become aware of what was familiar to you in your subconscious mind. Great. But then the question comes of, how much longer do you want to stay in this familiar territory? Even pain, certain types of pain, can be familiar to someone. So this is why, again, despite your good intentions, you may still accumulate and attract pain that is familiar to you. So the question comes, how much longer do you want to stay in what is familiar? How much longer do you want to stay in what is subconsciously familiar to you? If you look out into your reality and your life at the moment, and you don't like what you see, or you don't like what you're experiencing, realize that what you're experiencing most likely is familiar to you. Most likely it is familiar to you unawarely. It is familiar to you subconsciously. But the question comes, how much longer do you want to stay in what is familiar to you, which is not serving you? This is why people can go on for 5, 10, 15 years, decades and decades of their life, continuing to attract people that don't serve them, continuing to have the same boss within different jobs, like this, not the exact same person, right? But the same boss who has the same personality types in different jobs, because that is what is familiar to them. So what it comes down to is, what are you willing to change? Are you willing to change what is familiar to you into something that is unfamiliar to you but is serving you? All of this comes back to one of the strongest things, which is a frequency, which is an energy, which we call as human beings emotions. When we change our emotions, then we can start to change our identity, okay? Because again, your external just reflects your internal. So instead of waiting for your external to change, you need to change your internal in order for your external to change in a way that is serving you. So it comes back to our emotions and our identity. You want a different life, you want to attract different people, you want to stop attracting narcissistic people, you want to stop attracting the same personality within a boss and attract a boss who is serving you in a positive manner, then you need to change your identity. You need to start to change your emotions and change your identity and your emotions in a way that is unfamiliar to you. So when we realize this, we do realize, okay, everything in my external is what is familiar to me in my internal. But if we can change our internal, then we change our external, okay? For example, let's just say someone was living in a state of survival for years and years and years of their life, okay? And therefore, their way of living was in this energy and in this frequency, which whilst it was painful and whilst it was exhausting, it was familiar to them. And because they carried out this from childhood, they kept having jobs, relationships, just life experiences that kept putting them in a state of survival, that kept putting them in that familiar energy, that energy that doesn't serve them but is familiar to them. So if you can change your emotions and your thoughts and your beliefs about, for example, a job, working might have put you in a state of survival. Working might have been stressful for you when you were a child, for example, because you had to work to survive, for example. But then if you can change that emotion and feeling and believe that work doesn't have to be stressful, work can make me feel free, work can make me, instead of live in a state of survival, it can provide me a state of freedom. Work doesn't have to be stressful. And I don't deserve that stress. And you change your beliefs around that, then you are going to start to see a change in your reality. Or, for example, relationships. Let's just say as a child, your mum and your dad didn't get along. And their relationship was very stressful. Maybe they broke up, maybe they didn't, maybe there was a divorce, maybe it didn't. But they were always arguing, fighting, screaming, yelling, okay? So as a child, subconsciously you believed relationships are stressful. And so going about your adult life, you only experienced intimate relationships and maybe even friendships, different kinds of friendships, okay? But in a way was stressful. but that is what was familiar to you. But now, upon reflection, you ask yourself, am I willing to live in the state of familiar and keep on attracting stressful relationships for decades and decades of my life? Most likely your answer is no. Okay? So we can change our belief about that. Relationships don't have to be stressful. I deserve a relationship that fills me up rather than drains me. Mum and dad, for example, were an example of a relationship that I don't want. Mum and dad were not a representation of a relationship that I do want. So it does start with the awareness, and secondly, the reflection. But thirdly, and most importantly, if you're gonna take one thing out of this video, it is that, do you want to stay in the state of familiarity that isn't serving you for decades of your life? No, right? Change your emotions, change your identity, change your beliefs that you have about certain things in your life that at the moment are negative, that at the moment are painful, at the moment are not serving you, that are unpleasant. Because remember, we have the ability to change our life into any way, shape, or form that we want to. Okay? You can literally live any life that you want to live. You can also be anyone that you want to be. And just because you've been a certain way for, a certain time period of your life, it doesn't mean that you have to continue to be that way. People evolve, people can change. But those who don't evolve and don't change and would rather stay in the familiarity of something that isn't serving them, they continue to experience the same painful, negative, undeserving things in their life for decades of their life. See, the thing is, pain, most of the time, is such a strong emotion. And if certain elements of pain are familiar to you from your childhood, it is so strong and it is so ingrained that it is easier to attract the pain rather than attract the high vibe, enlightened way of living. It's so much easier to attract that pain. But again, you don't deserve that. Again, you have the ability to change that, but it starts with you. You change your identity, you change your emotions, you change your beliefs about yourself, about life, about relationships, about situations, about jobs, about anything in your life. You change your emotions, your beliefs, and you change the identity. You change the person that you need to be in order to attract different. Then you can, very much so, attract the high vibe, enlightened way of living. But that is up to you. And again, it does start with the awareness, okay? So to finish off here, it all starts with a change in identity. Your identity is not the way you look. Your identity is the way you feel about things, the beliefs you have about particular things, the emotions you have, the actions you take, the behaviors you make, the decisions you make, and therefore the result. Your emotions, your feelings, your behaviors, your actions, your beliefs, all of those things tie up into the result, that of which is your reality that you are living right now. And if you want to change your reality, change your beliefs, change your emotions, change your behaviors, change your actions, change your decisions. And therefore your result will be different because of the change there. But again, we really need to understand that most of this, that of which is unfamiliar, is scary. It is uncertain. As humans, we'd rather stay in the state of familiarity, even if it's painful, even if it doesn't serve us. And a lot of the time, you will attract things that are familiar to you that don't serve you, but you're not even aware that they're not serving you until it hits a certain breaking point. Okay, or until like a therapist or a psychologist or someone calls you out, or a video like this you watch and you actually reflect and you're like, oh, hang on a second. Just because I've experienced that before, and just because I've accepted it before, it doesn't mean that I should experience it or accept it again. So it's also a question of like, where are you willing to let it take you? Are you willing to let it go so far and then suffer the consequences and experience a huge breaking point and tipping point? Or are you willing to be courageous enough from a state of true worth and a state of, I'm really deserving of better and different, and you are courageous enough to take it and change your identity before it becomes that breaking point? That's the thing. A lot of people wait till it becomes the breaking point of a relationship, the breaking point of a job that you just no longer can stand because that boss is just so awful to you, right? They wait for the breaking point, the tipping point. But if you wait for the breaking point and the tipping point, that again is a reflection of your internal, that of which, okay, things have to get really, really, really bad in order for me to finally choose myself above something else. When at the end of the day, in the most unselfish manner, you are the only one living your life. You are the one that is completely responsible for your reality. So if you're going to take one thing away from this video, it is that of which you can live any life that you want to live. And if you can get clear on what you truly want, you will realize, okay, what I see and what I'm experiencing right now in certain areas, or maybe collectively together, is definitely what I don't want. And it's up to me to change that. But you don't go about it by going out externally and trying to change people or trying to tell your boss to talk to you nicer. Remember, you can't change people. And the only way to change your external environment, as in your life, as in your reality, is to change your internal. Your beliefs, your emotions, your behaviors, your actions, etc. And truly, if you look at anyone else who has completely flipped their life in an extreme way, okay? For example, people who have been in jail, people who have been very violent people, maybe they did something really wrong, but then they flipped it, and now they are the most unviolent person, someone who's never going to go into jail again and has attracted a lot of abundance and good prosperity into their life. That changed because they changed their identity. Not because they tried to change everyone else, you see. Because you can't change anyone else. But you can change you. And it does start with becoming aware of what is familiar to you that isn't serving to you, and what is familiar to you that isn't serving you. There are a lot of things that are familiar to you that aren't serving you, that you are completely unaware of. That's the point. That's why people keep attracting the same relationships, the same for decades of their life. For example, people pleasers. Once they're a people pleaser, they forever are a people pleaser, and they give, and they're running off an empty tank, and they never fill up their cup. That's because once what was familiar to them was being a people pleaser, and at some point, most likely in their childhood, they accepted, okay, I'm going to be a people pleaser, because when I'm a people pleaser, my teachers might like me, I get good grades, I win trophies in my swimming competitions, whatever it is. When I'm a people pleaser and I do what other people want me to do, then there is a payoff, right? A lot of which is familiar to you subconsciously comes with a payoff, whether it is acceptance, money, some sort of reward, there's some sort of gain, okay? And when you realize that, there's also the payoff, that of which is not serving you and is hurting you in some way, shape and form, okay? So I encourage you, if you want to change your reality, you want to change what you experience, the relationships you attract, you want to change it, you want to only attract the things that you deserve, you want to cut the cycle that you keep running into, that you don't mean to run into, but you keep running into, take it back in on yourself. Open up your internal, what beliefs you have about things, emotions you have about things, decisions you make, actions you take. And one thing that can really help is to decide to be, initially, is to just decide to be observant. Decide to listen and not act, or react, sorry. Decide to listen and not react, okay? Particularly when it comes to people. You can't change people. Observe, listen, It's like the let them theory by Mel Robbins. But that's it for today's video, guys. If you did like this video, then drop a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then do so, because there's always new videos coming out like this, and there's already a heap of videos that may help you as well. I'm quite impressed, I must say. That's one step into me changing my reality right now, is not being confined or running around the idea of perfectionism, right? There were people who were walking past me. There was a car with a person sitting there, maybe looking at me the whole time, I don't know, because I was looking at the camera, right? Nonetheless, that is a perfect, change in belief and emotions that I had, where I used to have the fear of everyone judging me, right? So previous me would never sit out here and film a video. Now, I don't care if people judge me. If they judge me or they don't judge me, it doesn't matter. My energy is in me. I'm not expanding my energy out to them, right? And therefore, that is changing my reality. By still uploading this video, despite, those tree choppers who were being really, 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 really loud. But I had to change my identity. I had to change my emotions and my beliefs about other people's judgment, okay? And it is a beautiful view anyway. I mean, just look at it. There's even a painting over there. I love this place so much, but I also did decide to wear leggings, and I'm getting a little hot and a little sweaty. So, and probably got a good enough tan by now. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.